Hello, welcome to KU Padasala. I am Dr. Sanchita J, Associate Professor of English, Government College for Women, Thiruvananthapuram. In this video series, we'll be taking a look at a complementary paper named Art and Literary Aesthetics. This complementary paper is included in the syllabus of the second semester BA English Language and Literature program of the University of Kerala. Let me begin with a very simple definition of art. What exactly do you mean by the term art? If you look around, you find that there are many objects created by man. If you look at art, for instance, you will find that there are instances of art dating back to the prehistoric age, to the old Stone Age, for instance. So art is basically a creative expression. It also involves an element of technical skill, but it is usually considered as an imaginative, creative expression of human beings. Art involves communication of the inner thoughts, feelings, desires, the perceptions of nature, of the people around, and even of social issues. Now, the general characteristics of art include the primary basis of art is that it is mimetic in nature. The concept of mimesis goes back to ancient Greece, to Plato and Aristotle. According to Plato, mimesis is the representation of reality. But Aristotle took it one step further when he said, or when he claimed that mimesis is not just a mere copying or a mere imitation of reality, it is actually a creative re-representation of reality. So art is basically mimetic in nature, and it should have the ability to communicate. Now in this video we will be taking a look at Herbert Reed's, an excerpt from Herbert Reed's The Meaning of Art. Now, Herbert Reed was a very influential art and literary critic. He was also a poet. The Meaning of Art is his seminal work that was published in 1931. This is considered a classic work, and it gives us a compact survey of the world's art. It gives a basis for the appreciation of paintings, sculpture, and art objects of the world from different periods dating back to the cave paintings of the prehistoric age. This book also explains the persistence of certain principles and aspirations throughout the history of art. Now, in this excerpt, he begins with a description of visual arts. He gives importance to visual arts in this excerpt, and he terms visual arts as the plastic arts. And according to him, arts should include, the term arts or visual arts should include both literature and music. Now you know that arts can generally be classified as visual arts and performing arts, and literature is also included among the arts. According to Herbert Reed, literature and music should be included in the category visual arts. And for this he quotes the words of Schopenhauer, the German philosopher. Schopenhauer has been called the artist's philosopher because of his remarks on aesthetic sensibility. Now, according to Schopenhauer, all arts aspire to the condition of music. Now, the reason why Schopenhauer has said this is that, unlike other arts, music has the ability to evoke an immediate response from the audience. In architecture, for instance, the architect uses buildings to convey his expression. A writer or a poet uses language. A painter uses colors, sounds, and shapes. But only in music, the artist can appeal directly to the audience. Now, the aim of art, according to Herbert Reed, is basically to please. And an artist always attempts to create pleasing forms, and it also aims to satisfy our sense of beauty. Now he goes on to talk about this sense of beauty. The sense of beauty is actually a kind of negation to the sense of ugliness. But according to Reed, the sense of beauty is satisfied only when we appreciate a work of art which signifies a unity, a harmony in our sense perceptions. So he defines a sense of beauty as a sense of pleasurable sensations. For example, when we look at a flower or when we look at a beautiful painting, the kind of sensations it evokes in you, that is the sense of beauty. And he says that beauty is a fluctuating phenomenon. This concept called beauty, it has changed over the years. And the earlier assumption was that ugliness is a negation of art. But the present view or the contemporary view is that art is not necessarily about beauty in the classical concept. And a permanent element in mankind, according to Reid, is man's aesthetic sensibility. So this concept of beauty, according to Reid, actually arose in ancient Greece. So the Greek concept is considered the classical concept, and the Greeks emphasized on idealization, perfection in form, proportion, nobility and serenity. The Greek concept was later followed by the Romans, and it's also seen in the Renaissance art. The primitive ideal of art is that art was basically an expression of fear. The primitive man was more concerned with solving the mysteries of the universe, trying to understand what is happening around him, what is happening in nature. So it is a kind of expression of awe, of fear. The Byzantine ideal of art is that art is divine, intellectual and abstract. And the Oriental ideal is also similar. It's abstract, that art is abstract, non-human, metaphysical and instinctive. Now Reid goes on to list 3 stages in artistic activity. The first stage is perception or observation, observation of the environment, observation of people, perception of colors, sounds, gestures and even complex reactions. The second step in artistic activity is the arrangement of these perceptions into different patterns or different arrangements. And as said earlier, art is basically an attempt to please. And the third and final step is how to make this arrangement correspond to a set of emotions or a particular state of emotion in order to give expression. So Reid uses the words of another Italian philosopher named Benedetto Croce, who said that expression is the basic creative act in all the arts. So art is primarily a form of expression and it is very important. So art can also be defined as a kind of organic unity of emotion and expression. It can produce not just pleasing effects, it can also produce effects like horror, terror, fear, chaos, darkness, nothingness, everything. But the ultimate expression should be powerful and should be sublime. And Reid also dismisses aesthetic pseudo concepts. For example, when he talks about the sense of beauty, he says that beauty is a fluctuating phenomenon. The concept of beauty changes over time. Reid also refers to another ancient Greek concept named the golden section. The golden section is a kind of geometrical proportion that you would find in the ancient pottery, for instance, Greek pottery. So he said that the key to the mysteries of art lies in unraveling the golden section, the formula of golden section. And he says the pyramids of Egypt are a perfect example. But according to Herbert Reid, perfection is something that makes art cold and lifeless. So he uses the analogy of poetry. So he says that a poem which is perfectly regular in verse would sound very monotonous. It would sound almost intolerable. So a poet should vary rhythm and meter according to his or her own instincts and sensibility. And Reid says that he prefers the Japanese way. The Japanese artists sometimes make sure that their art is not perfect or regular. So according to him, perfection is not mandatory in art. He also talks about distortion. Now, distortion basically means moving away from the norms, moving away from tradition or conventional norms. So here he says that distortion refers to departing from the geometrical section or geometrical harmony, and it is basically a disregard for proportions. And distortion was surprisingly found even in ancient Greek art, like the Aphrodite, the statue of Aphrodite in Melos, and also in ancient Chinese art, for instance. He gives the examples of, he gives the picture of a dragon to show how it is fairly very difficult to understand or to identify the dragon in the picture or in the artwork, because it has been distorted to a greater level. And towards the end of this excerpt, he emphasizes that a work of art should contain, one, a personal element, two, a distinguished sensibility, and of course something that is original, and a unique and private vision of the world. And he also makes special mention of pottery. He says that pottery is pure art. It is historically considered one among the first arts. And he uses two examples, one of the Greek vase, which he says is a symbol of classical harmony, and also the Chinese or the Oriental vase, which symbolizes dynamic harmony. And he ends this excerpt with a connection, or trying to connect art with literature. He says, the rise of the portrait and the rise of the novel are almost in the same time period. The rise of the portrait is in 1337, and the rise of the novel was with Boccaccio's first tale that was published in 1339. So why does he make this comparison? So he says a good portrait actually portrays the character of the person, and Reed says that both the artist and the novelist are psychologists in one way, because both of them actually delve deep into the characters or the psyche of an individual. He also talks about Shakespeare's characters. Shakespeare's characters are prototypes of passions and aspirations of humanity in general. So with that, we come to the discussion on the excerpt of Herbert Reed's The Meaning of Art. And now let me take you through various art movements in history. It is important to know something about the origin of art and how it has evolved through the ages. Now, the history of art dates back to thousands of years. It goes back to the prehistoric age, though some critics don't consider it as a form of art. It is still included as the origin or the first movement in art history. And each age is culturally significant, and it reflects the socio-political influences of that particular period. So prehistoric art is roughly between 40,000 and 4,000 BC, and the art of this period relied on the use of natural pigments and rocks, or sharp stones, which were used to make engravings or carvings. And the art forms usually represented objects in nature, plants, animals, and even some of the rituals followed by the people of the old Stone Age. The earliest artifacts, therefore, include rock carvings, engravings, cave paintings, pictorial imagery, sculptures, and also stone arrangements. Now, the second important movement in art is the ancient art, roughly between 4000 BC and 400 AD. Ancient art was produced by advanced civilizations, advanced in the sense they had a written language. And these advanced civilizations include Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece. So the medium of a work of art during this period, it varies depending on the civilization that produced it. But during this period, art also served utilitarian purposes. For instance, the people of this period used to decorate their bowls or even weapons with art forms. So art was basically used to tell stories, even tell stories of gods and goddesses. It also displayed religious and symbolic imagery, and it was also used to demonstrate social status. One of the most famous works of ancient art is from Mesopotamia. It is named the Code of Hammurabi. It was created around 1792 BC, and this is a rock piece. It bears a set of engravings, a set of laws, Babylonian laws, code of laws engraved and it is adorned by an image of the king of the period, the king who ruled, named King Hammurabi, and also a Mesopotamian god named Shabash. Next is the medieval age or the Middle Ages. It is often referred to, this period is often referred to as the Dark Ages because of the disintegration in economic and culture following the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. Much of the artwork produced during this period also is very dark. You find grotesque imagery and so on. And after the first half, you find that art was mainly centered around the church. And you find this in elaborately decorated churches, in the church windows and so on. You find mostly art depicting biblical subjects and scenes from classical mythology. Now, Gothic architecture is very important. Is a very important form of art form that evolved during this period, and one of the best examples of Gothic architecture is the famous Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. Following this, we have the Renaissance art from 1400 to 1600 AD. Now, the style of painting, sculpture, and decorative art of the Renaissance was characterized by a focus on nature and individualism. The thought that man was independent and self-reliant. Now, these are ideals that were already there during the medieval period, but then they flourished during the Renaissance period. And the Renaissance reached its height in Florence, largely due to the influence of a very wealthy family there named the Medicis. And the High Renaissance period, which lasted from 1490 to 1527, produced influential artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. Now, artwork throughout the Renaissance was characterized by realism, attention to detail, and precise study of the human anatomy. The Renaissance artists used linear depth, linear perspective, and created depth through intense lighting and shading. But after the High Renaissance period, art changed drastically because of the clashes between Christianism and humanism. The next important movement in art is Mannerism. The Mannerist artists were highly influenced by the Renaissance artists like Michelangelo and Raphael. But their figures were slightly different. They were more graceful, elongated, and they had small heads and stylized features and exaggerated details. Their compositions were more complex and stylistic, and they didn't rely on classical ideals of harmony and linear perspective that was used by the Renaissance artists. Bronzino is considered as one of the most important Mannerist painter in Florence. The next important art movement is the Baroque movement. The Baroque period was characterized by grandeur and richness. It was punctuated by an interest in broadening the human intellect and global discovery. Their art forms were stylistically complex. Baroque paintings were characterized by drama, and you can see this in the Dutch painters' works, Rembrandt's. The painters used an intense contrast between dark and light shades, and their compositions were very energetic. The next movement is Rococo. It originated in Paris, and it included decorative art, painting, architecture, and sculpture. This was a comparatively softer style of art when compared to the exuberance of Baroque art. Rococo is characterized by lightness and elegance, and it focused on the use of natural forms, asymmetrical patterns, and subtle colors. It was also used in silverware, porcelain, and French furniture. Neoclassical movement is the next phase in art movement. As the name itself suggests, it drew upon elements from the classical period, and neoclassical artists attempted to recreate or to revive the classical works of art by using harmony, simplicity, and proportion. The next movement in art history is the Romantic movement. The Romantic movement is one of the golden ages in art history as it was in literature. It emphasized on individualism and imagination, appreciation of nature, and it focused on conveying or representing passions, emotions, sensations over intellect and reason that was predominant during the neoclassical age. Henry Fuseli is one of the representative painters of the Romantic age. His bizarre paintings explode the recesses, the dark side of the human psyche. William Blake is another English painter whose mysterious poems and images conveyed mystical visions and his discontent in societal restraints. Now let us take a look at one of the most famous paintings during the that was produced during the Romantic phase in art movement, and that is by a French painter named Eugene Delacroix, and the painting is Liberty Leading the People. If you look at the painting, you will find a very striking image of a woman who is partially nude, and she is leading a group of people. This painting was actually inspired by the July Revolution of 1830, and Delacroix is supposed to have witnessed this revolution. This revolution took place in Paris from 27th to 29th, 1830. The painting was also produced in the same year. Now, if you look at the painting, you will find something which makes it different from, or something that makes this revolution different from the earlier French Revolution. People from all classes, irrespective of whether they belong to the lower class, the working class, or the elites, the aristocratic people, they came together to fight against or to protest against the oppressive reign of King Charles X. And this was, as I said, this was painted right after the revolution. Now, the lady in the middle is an allegorical depiction of liberty. She is named Marianne, and she symbolizes the French Republic. If you take a look, if you take a closer look, you will find that she has a Phrygian cap on her head, and it resembles the liberty cap that was earlier used during the French Revolution. And she is holding the tricolor flag of the revolution in one hand. This flag was supposed to be banned. In the other hand, she holds a bayonet with a musket. And in the foreground, on the left side of the painting, you find two men representing two different classes. The first on the left side is a man who is wearing a shirt with an apron. He is also carrying a bag. He has a pistol tucked into his pants, and he is wielding a saber in the other hand. This man is obviously a member of the working class. He is probably a laborer. And the man standing right next to him belongs to the bourgeois. And he is holding a shotgun, and from the clothes you understand he belongs to a rich family, because he has a top hat, a cravat, a well-tailored coat, and a vest. And if you look at the ground, you find that it is scattered with dead bodies, with injured people. And at the feet of Liberty, you have a man requesting her for help or looking for inspiration. On the right side of the painting, you find a wild-looking schoolboy, very energetic. And you understand that he is a schoolboy from his velvet cap and the satchel that he holds. Now, this boy is holding two pistols, and he is a symbol of youth. So Delacroix, through this painting, has represented, or he has pointed out, how people of different classes took part in this July Revolution. At Liberty's feet, for instance, you find two dead men. One of them in a nightshirt, he is nude from the waist down, and another is a dead soldier. He is a soldier because he is wearing the blue uniform of the king's army. And far in the background, you find the Notre Dame, the Gothic cathedral in Paris. The tricolor is flying on the cathedral. It was earlier symbolic of the power of the king, but now it is symbolic of the triumph of liberty. So let's take a look at the romantic elements in this painting. Liberty here is represented as a personification of freedom. Again, you find a range of human emotions expressed in the painting, ranging from heroism to anger to despair, frustration, misery, and so on. And the painter Delacroix has used vivid contrast. He has used light and dark shades to emphasize movement and energy. Now, if you look at the central figure, the woman named Marianne, she resembles ancient Greek sculptures of ancient Greek goddesses, Greek or Roman goddesses. It is evident from the costume and the partial nudity. She wears a yellow dress with tied with a red sash. But she holds two symbols of modernity in her hand. On the right hand, she is holding the tricolor flag, and on her left, she holds a bayonet with a musket. And what is the legacy of the painting? This painting was an inspiration to later artists. For example, Victor Hugo's famous novel Les Miserables, published in 1862, it is said that he was influenced by this painting. And again, the Statue of Liberty that you find in New York City, a gift from the French government to the American government, and the French artist Bartholdi was inspired by this painting, Liberty Leading the People. Again, another musician, an American musician, George Antheil, his Symphony No. 6 was named after Delacroix, and it is said that this musical arrangement, if you listen to this musical composition, you can actually feel the movement of liberty, liberty leading the people. It has also been used by the famous music band Coldplay. The album cover titled Viva la Vida that came out in 2008. It had the same painting, exactly the same painting with the words Viva la Vida written in white. And again, the 11th episode of Netflix animation series named Ghost in the Shell that came out in 2020 also mentions this particular painting, Liberty Leading the People. So with that, we come to the end of this video. I hope you find this useful. We'll discuss the rest of the art movements in another video. Till then, goodbye.